Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a few different things going on there. One of them is that um, the world is finally interested in, I think through Rogan, through a few other different big popular podcasts that have popularized long form content. Because and it's in a way it's like slow food for a fast world. And so depending on the podcast, I mean, some podcasts are super well edited and they can be done in 15, 20 minutes. I don't, I'm not saying I won't ever do that, but I got into it more so mostly because Rogan was having these big, long, interesting, sprawling conversations where you start to really get to know somebody. So if there's somebody, whoever your person is of interest, it's so nice to like not be rushed, and you get to hear all their little mannerisms. You get to hear their ums and their uhs, and they're like, I'm not sure about that, and instead of it being a pretty quick clip based scenario. So I think for the thinkers, for the ones that are really interested, then podcasts fill that space that before we were just listening to kind of news bites. Maybe like I found myself, I used to be like an NPR guy. I've listened to National Public Radio. I don't know if that's even popular in the UK at all, but um, and it would just be because they'd have stories and they would interview people and their interviews would be a little bit longer. But then once I clicked over, it's been probably 10 years or so that I've been probably listening to Rogan off and on now. And other subsequent podcasts and informational podcasts, TED Talks and stuff like that, is that it becomes a place for learning in a way that you don't always have to have it. You don't have to be glued to it. It can kind of also be in the background because the most interesting things tend to pop out, down the road. Like you don't have to be always glued to the TV or to the radio, so to speak, to get your information. So and then secondarily, I'll say that I think that because podcast has become the supplementary genre of content, so no matter what you do, you also have a podcast. Like I got my good buddy Don Wade, who I'm helping him start his podcast because he's a badass ceramics guy. Check it out. He makes these super sick
Oh,
mugs, right? Like he's a master potter, and this is actually a really recent one. I'm like, dude, make me a mega mug so I can not have to go fill up my coffee. Um, but he's really good at his stuff, and I'm like, yo, like one of the ways, in as a marketing person, as somebody that's interested in getting other people interested in your product and your brand, is uh you know is doing a podcast and being interested in other people doing what you're doing. So that part of it right there, I think, is such a key element. Not everybody approaches it with that intention, but when you're interested in other people, then you by that interest become interesting to other people, right? And because it's kind of a point of service, like in your life. It's like, well, how can I elevate somebody else, like elevate this guy over here and hear his story, and in turn, people will be interested in that I held space for their story and ask these interesting questions, right? So I think those are my reasons for why I think podcasting is so popular, but I'm sure there's some others that are relevant.